These days, every job is a technology job. Whether you're a programmer, a marketer, or even just someone who sits down in front of a computer every day, you have a stake in the tapestry of the technology industry. Welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovations, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. Join host Gloria Bell, founder of the Women in Tech Summit, multi-hyphenate entrepreneur, and advocate for equity and equality in tech, as she sits down with extraordinary guests from the WITS community. Listen in as they discuss wisdom from their career journeys, pro tips from their areas of expertise, and sneak previews of the biggest upcoming tech trends. This is Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and Inspiring Tech Foundation.
Hello, and welcome to Wits and Wisdom, a podcast sharing insights, innovations, and inspiration from the award-winning Women in Tech Summit. I'm your host, Gloria Bell, founder of WITS and the Inspiring Tech Foundation. Head on over to womenintechsummit.com to learn more. And just a reminder, for those affected by layoffs within the tech industry, we do have a ticket assistant program that you can learn more about on our website. It's the first item under the About tab. Today, I'm joined by Denise Wong.
Thank you for having me, Gloria. So happy to be here.
Denise, I know you've had a long and varied career in terms of discovering and following your career journey in robotics and within the robotics field. So I want to dive right in. I want to talk about early age. You started tinkering with technology pretty early. Was it your family that encouraged you, or where did you get that inspiration?
So I come from a family of engineers. Both my mom and sister are chemical engineers. So I grew up thinking I would be an engineer, which is fairly unusual. At the time, I didn't realize how lucky I was that this was just an option for me, and just being exposed to engineering, it was just like being an engineer would have been the same as being any other career for me. So I feel very lucky to have my mom as a woman in tech role model at a very young age.
What were some of those first technologies that you were tinkering with, and how young were you?
I was fascinated by electronics. I think we were moving from the 2-prong to the 3-prong ground plug. I don't know if you remember like poking the pencil in the ground prong and releasing the gate so that you could plug your appliances in that were 2-prong only. Maybe there was like a standard change or something like that. And she was like, here's a plug, fix it. And there was like a little instruction. And I was like, oh, this is an electronics item. How weird that you're having me do this. But it was very safe. It wasn't plugged in. She would check my work. And so having that freedom at an early age, I really appreciated.
A lot of trust there from your mom.
She checks my work. I think maybe that was the big thing. Starting at that young age, I'm not afraid to break things because I do believe I can fix them. That's not always true. I think I can try to fix some things, but also I know who to call if I need something fixed. So I'm not as stressed about it.
That was a great lesson to learn pretty early. So you started out in mechanical engineering. Then when you got your PhD, you transitioned into micro robots, which I want to learn more about. And then you entered a new field. So talk to us about what that journey looked like from undergrad to postgrad, and then what you ended up doing when you got a little further into your career.
I'm a builder at heart, and that's why I became a mechanical engineer. My first job was in manufacturing engineering, making lighting controls. I realized a few months into that job that I didn't love it. I was like fresh out of college, and I wanted to do something that I loved. And one of the things I really value about an engineering education is, you're learning mechanical engineering, but you're also learning a lot of analytical skills that are transferable. And also just this journey has helped me build this confidence that I'm able to learn something new. If I'm interested, if I'm passionate, if I work hard at it, I can learn something new. And I've demonstrated that over and over again. And so when I'm interested in trying something new, I kind of remind myself that it is scary, it is different, but I can do this. I remembered that I had done undergraduate research in a robotics lab and loved that. So I decided to go back to graduate school for robotics.
In these transitions that you had from mechanical engineering, what did you find that was similar? And then what did you find that was like radically different?
Especially coming back to grad school after having worked for a year and a half, I remember coming onto campus for a prospective students visit. And meeting all of these other prospective students, and they just seemed as if they knew so much more than I did about robotics. They would be naming all these different robotic systems from different research labs. And, I had been out of academia for about a year, which doesn't seem like a long time. But in that time, I felt like I was so disconnected from the research that was going on. I felt out of place. And so that was really hard, not coming straight through undergraduate. I think I felt like I maybe had missed out or wasn't as prepared. The last math class I took, instead of being last year, was 2 years ago. And so the imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon was really setting in for me. I didn't feel like I was as well prepared as some of my other classmates. But I was really lucky in that, especially in an academic setting, it's one of those great environments where they build in these support networks for you. So there's, Society of Women Engineers at the university I went to. We had Advancing Women in Engineering. So we had a lot of social events where you were able to be connected with other women and non-binary folks who were in engineering and maybe sharing some of those similar feelings as you. And so having that community really helped me. I had an incredible mentor as well throughout my graduate school, and reminding myself again that I can learn something new, I can learn something hard. As long as I work hard at it and I'm passionate about it, I can learn new things, I can do hard things.
Finding community really helped you.
Yeah, definitely. I think community is such a big part of my story, and also what I tell younger engineers when they're feeling alone or when they feel like they're the only. A community of people that you feel comfortable talking to and who are great listeners, who can relate. Someone who you maybe see yourself in can be really helpful. And so for me, in the school setting, a lot of this came from this structure that already existed. And then when I graduated and got my first job at a small startup, we didn't have those communities anymore. And so what I ended up finding, instead of a tech community, is a community within the cycling community in Philadelphia. And so, they're not engineers, but the cycling community is also lacking in diversity. There are a lot of parallels between cycling and the tech space, where there aren't a lot of women in the space. It's quite cliquey, and the barrier to entry can be quite high. Often you're the only, if you're a woman in a cycling race, or there just aren't that many races for women in cycling. And there's an organization called Philly Devo that is focused on equity within cycling. And so I joined that program, and through that community, I had a lot of great support. Kind of feeling that sense of belonging, even though it wasn't necessarily in tech, has really helped me a lot.
So finding that community, whether it's in what you do or another community that kind of gives you that sense of belonging, how do you feel that is weighed with kind of an interest or a passion for the work? Like, where do you think those two weigh each other out in helping you navigate the journey?
For me, they go hand in hand. I think the passion and the excitement is so contagious. And so I think one of the things that, Gloria, you reminded us all at WITS Philadelphia is get out there and brag and tell your story. And so I'm so grateful to be here to be able to do that, because I want other people to see me, and maybe a little bit of my story resonates with them and they can imagine themselves working in tech or working in robotics or going to grad school or trying something new and changing your mind or something like that. And so I'm really grateful to be here for that, and hoping that other people resonates. And I think they go hand in hand. It can be a lonely feeling, I think, when you're really passionate about something and you don't have anyone to share it with. Because then, at least for me, I'll start doubting myself. I was like, oh, maybe this isn't so exciting. And maybe this is part of academia too. The number of citations you get is such a core part of the evaluation metric. If a lot of other people are citing you, then you become more popular. But how do you get that popularity? You've got to go into your community and present your work and tell other people about it. One of the things I do really love about academia is when someone cites a paper that's 10 years old and they say, sometimes this math that was discovered 10 years ago was not tractable or couldn't be used because we didn't have the computational power, or we didn't have something else to be able to use it or mass produce it. We didn't have the technologies. But today we do, and we can utilize that old thinking and that old work, that old innovation, and make something new. And nobody really ever does anything on their own.
What would you say was either your most challenging transition or maybe your biggest takeaway that you've had, your biggest learning experience?
There have been so many great learning experiences, and I think there are so many more to come. It is very challenging being a minority in tech, and it can be really tiring. And then I go to an event like WITS and I get rejuvenated because I see people that I can really relate to, people that are inspiring. I get new ideas, perhaps about how to approach a problem. And that's like a big recharge. I try to think about ways where I can use my diversity. I use the differences that I have as a secret power, as a strength. I think there are gender stereotypes, systematic biases that are preventing women from working in these spaces. And the work is incredibly interesting. And so I'm hoping that the technology that I'm working on and robotics in general has the ability to unlock more careers and more interesting options for a more diverse group of people.
That is what we are all hoping for. And that's why I love being able to talk with women like you who have got such fascinating careers and really highlight what you're doing, show everybody that these options are out there. So we know working in STEM fields is incredibly rewarding. But as a woman, it can also come with its challenges. And you and your panel at WITS here in Philly, you addressed some of those challenges, did an absolutely fantastic job. So let's talk about some of the roadblocks that you and your colleagues identified for phenomenal women in robotics in particular. Touch on some of those for our audience.
So some of the roadblocks are these systemic biases that exist that perhaps make it harder for us to even enter because people don't see us belonging. So I think some of the challenges of women in tech is finding that sense of belonging because you don't necessarily see the people who you can relate to around you, and just society isn't portraying that for you. And you kind of have to constantly be your own cheerleader or find a group of people to be your cheerleader to remind you that, yes, you belong. Yes, you should take up that space. And just by being here, you are phenomenal and you are remarkable and you deserve it. That constant kind of cheerleading can be pretty tiring.
I would definitely agree. And that was a great sneak peek of some of the things that your panel talked about as far as tips to help overcome some of these challenges and some of these roadblocks. Were there any others that your panel shared that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, in terms of tips, I think finding that support group is so important. Sometimes, if I have a question or I just want to bounce an idea off somebody, I'll reach out to somebody within that group. For example, one of us came into our monthly meeting fuming about note taking in a meeting. And someone else responded with, I hear you. I've been there before. Here's a twist on note taking. If you're the note taker, it's a position of power. You're the one who is writing down how things are being interpreted. You're determining what's important. In fact, this could be a great learning opportunity in terms of trying to distill what's important, what's actionable. These are now the notes that everybody is going to use as an outcome from this meeting. And sometimes that's not promotable work for you, but could be promotable work for somebody else. And so a lot of times, women get put in these positions to do some of these kind of, I'll call them like housekeeping-ish tasks. Women are placed in positions to carry out some of these considered less technical tasks. And maybe you can suggest somebody else to work on them or put it in a different frame to make it more beneficial for your career.
That's a great tip. We often don't think about the reframing of it. So, have there been individuals or communities during your journey that you've been particularly supported by?
Yeah, so I'm still close friends with other engineers that I've met through Swiss Society of Women Engineers or Advancing Women in Engineering groups as part of my academic career. And more recently, I've found a community called SheTO, which is a nonprofit that connects women and non-binary engineering leaders together in an online community. And that's been really great because working at a small company, we don't have a lot of that. And so that has been really impactful. One of the things I wanted to talk about with cycling was when I first joined the cycling community, I joined as a novice cyclist who was interested in road racing. And so I was coming in as a beginner and being coached and mentored by other people who have more cycling experience than I do. And especially as you kind of advance more into your career and you become more seasoned, to use some of the terms from our panel, sometimes you forget what it's like to try something new and what it's like to do something that's hard. And that can really bring a different perspective when you're explaining something to like a younger engineer or somebody who's interested in entering the field. And through cycling, through Philly Devo, I've been learning all these new skills. And I think a lot of that is transferable into the tech realm where maybe I'm trying something new and trying to remember what that feels like, or I'm trying to explain something to somebody who's not in robotics. Taking my own experience as a novice in cycling and remembering some of the skills, the pedagogy that our coaches and mentors used to help me gain these new skills, and now being able to utilize that as I explain complex technologies and capabilities to other people has been really helpful.
That was a great addition. I'm glad you added that.
Yeah, it was funny. I just started mountain biking and I was going over a log with one of my teammates and they said, "Are you going to try this?" I was like, "No, I'm scared." And they said, "I'm scared too, but I'm going to try it." And so it was a great reminder, especially as a parent now as well. Yeah, things are scary, but it's also good to try things that are scary.
Absolutely. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn and connect. Feel free to reach out to me if you're looking for any help, but also don't be afraid to ask other people for help. I think you'll be surprised at how willing they are to help you.
Definitely a very good piece of advice. Denise, thank you so much for joining us on Wits and Wisdom. I am sure our audience got so much out of our conversation.
This has been a pleasure, Gloria. Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you again to all of our listeners for joining us once again on Wits and Wisdom. Stay tuned for the next episode. And be sure and visit womenintechsummit.com to learn more about our upcoming summits. And we will see you on the next Wits and Wisdom.
Ready to learn more about the Women in Tech Summit? Visit our website at womenintechsummit.net. That's womenintechsummit.net to view our most up-to-date event schedules, calls for speakers, and sponsorship opportunities. If you enjoyed this episode, bookmark the show, give us a follow, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us educate, inspire, and connect with even more movers and shakers within and beyond the technology industry. Thanks for listening, and see you here again soon on Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation.